My name is Amber. This is my son Jesse. We're going to talk about his story and what it was like going to school, growing up with epilepsy. So Jesse was diagnosed with epilepsy when he was really little. He was probably 2 months old when he had his first seizure, which was really scary for a mom who had never heard about seizures or saw one at all. I remember pulling over on the side of the road, calling 911, and me describing what was happening, and the lady telling me that it sounded like he was having a seizure. So starting with school, I made sure that I went to each one of his teachers, and I explained to them what his seizures were, what type of seizures he was having, and what they could expect and what I would expect out of them. The biggest thing that we ran across was teachers were completely lost because they knew nothing about seizures. So I had to contact my son's neurologist and see if there was a nurse who was willing to come to the school who would actually do training with his teachers to show them what to expect, because I was still learning at myself of what seizures were. Getting to the next thing is you have to have a seizure action plan. Teachers weren't even aware of a seizure action plan. His neurologist gave me this form and was telling me he filled it out. So he would put on the seizure action form what type of seizure there was, what we would do in the fact of a seizure. Anytime that they have a seizure that is longer than 3 minutes, they have to be administered a seizure emergency medication. That is to help them come out of that seizure. These schools have to be trained to know how to administer this medication because they don't have that training unless they are forced to take that training when they have a child inside that school who are needing that medication. The biggest thing that we dealt with after that was Jesse ended up having to wear a medical helmet. The kids took it upon themselves. They would walk by him, smack his helmet. Sometimes these smacks were really light, but other times these smacks could be really hard to the point where they would actually turn his medical helmet. These seem like really small things to the other kids that they think that this does no harm. This is actually a really dangerous thing for somebody who has seizures or epilepsy. A small hit to the head can throw them into a seizure immediately. So I constantly had to fight with the schools to let them understand we cannot let these kids be smacking his helmet. They would throw things at him. They would take his stuff from him and try to pass it back and forth to play keep away. He would try to tell the teachers what was going on. But the thing is that Jesse is also autistic, so he has that social skill barrier where it makes it a little harder for him to put his emotions into words for his teachers. But he had key words like help to let teachers know that he was needing help, that something was wrong. That teacher was supposed to come to him when he gave that sign or said the key word help to let her know that something was going on. A lot of times we got backlash, but Jesse needs to separate himself from these people. So in order for her to be able to separate Jesse from his other kids, it's not that simple because these kids are going to find ways. You could separate him. He might be able to walk off, but that's not going to stop them from throwing things or saying words that are pretty hurtful because they would pick on him, say that he was doing, pretending to have a seizure for attention. That's kind of hurtful for somebody who has seizures because a child is not going to pretend like they're having a seizure for attention because that's negative attention that they're wanting. No child wants any negative attention. They would take his lunchbox, toss him around the classroom. They would take his belongings off of his desk and hide them within the classrooms to make him hunt them down. What they're not realizing is, the teachers don't realize it either, is that any of this type of attention, negative attention, is causing stress on a child who has epilepsy. Stress is a really big trigger for people with epilepsy. That kind of stress will throw them into a seizure immediately, and that would require for the teachers to stop teaching class, pull the class to attention, get some medical treatment for the child having the seizure. Child doesn't want that kind of attention. They are already getting enough attention anyways, having to walk around with the stress of, okay, today am I going to have a seizure in front of school? Who's going to see it? Is it going to happen on a school bus? What's going to happen next? They are already stressed out. We don't need to add more stress to these kids. So that was one of the biggest things that Jesse encountered. But I think things got easier when he got to high school. He had a little bit of bullying in, I think, freshman year. He had a child who tried to bully him. But I think once we sat this child down and explained to him about Jesse's medical, it dawned on him, okay, well, that explains why some things were a little off about him. Yeah, maybe our kids just need better education to understand that everybody's different. We're all unique in our own ways. Just because you don't have seizures and nobody in your family has seizures doesn't mean that you won't encounter somebody in some time in your life to have a seizure. And the best thing that we can do is to teach you what to do when you do see somebody having a seizure. It's better to have you educated and prepared than we lose somebody from a seizure that could have been prevented. Jesse only didn't get bullied in school, but he just got discriminated. There were times where he was told that he couldn't take certain classes because they were afraid that he would have a seizure. And the teacher would tell me, I have too many kids in my class. I can't take the time out to keep a close eye on him to make sure that something doesn't happen to him. Well, that's not fair to him because all he wants is the same rights as that the rest of the kids get. He wants to take the same classes that are offered to all the kids. And these kids shouldn't be told that they cannot take a class just because they have a medical issue and it might require a teacher to intervene at times. Maybe the teacher might step out of the class and something happens and one of the other kids need to step up. That would be a great time for all these kids to know seizure first aid. And it's really simple. If you see somebody having a seizure, if they're standing up, guide them straight down to the ground. Roll them over on their side. Have somebody to time it because you don't want to leave them in a seizure longer than 3 to 5 minutes. If so, call 911. And just because somebody's having a seizure doesn't mean that you have to call 911. Now, if it's their first time having a seizure, or if they've been injured, or if they've had a seizure inside of a pool or near water, then yes. But if they're having a seizure, roll them over on their side. Have somebody time it. If you need to call 911, have somebody to call 911. If it's the female, take their purse, put it up underneath their head. That way their head is protected. If it's a guy, take your jacket, put it under their head. Protect their head so their head's not banging around on the ground. Stay with them. Stay calm. Talk the person through it because they're going to come out of it. They're going to be confused. Some of them might know that they've had a seizure. Some might not. They're not going to be alert right at first. Give them time to adjust. They need to fully come out of that seizure and be alert before you leave them alone. Never leave them alone unless they are able to stand up and take care of themselves and they are alert. It's simple. We just need to take care of each other and look out for each other.